For more on the issue of slavery reparations, I want to bring in Niambi Carter now. Niambi is assistant professor with the political science department at Howard University. Niambi, thank you so much for joining us. A lot of talk now, a serious talk for the first time, I think, about direct cash payments, housing assistance, education and business aid, that sort of thing. What do you think about that?
Well, I still think we're still a far way off from any real governmental programming. I mean, we still have a Senate that won't even pass voting rights. So I think there's less of an appetite for something that looks like direct cash payments, although you've had some localities like Asheville, North Carolina, and others who are thinking through some of this and figuring out a way to maybe institutionalize this kind of repair.
Well, California, apparently, I was reading today, the state of California, in a move being sponsored, if you will, or promoted by the governor, Gavin Newsom, may well become the first state in the land to pay African Americans reparations. Apparently, they have a task force in California now.
Yeah, and they wouldn't be the first. I mean, we've seen smaller communities like in Rosewood, Florida. We've seen the descendants of people enslaved by Georgetown University receive some redress from the institution itself. So California is coming into a conversation that has been well underway, but certainly it's very piecemeal and it really depends on where you are.
But there is a conversation which is brewing. Do you think this has been promoted by what happened to George Floyd and also cell phone usage, which is prominent now and shows us a lot of things that people didn't believe really happened in the past, but now they see that they do?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The George Floyd moment pretty much, I think, brought a lot of racial justice issues into stark relief. But remember, we were talking about reparations in this country in the lead up to the 2020 elections. Moreover, this reparations conversation has been a long-standing one in the U.S., but we can't be too hopeful, I think, because what we saw is those months after the George Floyd protests and those Black Lives Matter protests happening globally, white opinion in particular, went back to sort of pre George Floyd levels. So it's hard to be able to say from that moment we're actually going to get something that looks like real considerate reparations at the national level.
Right, let's just go one step back, because there is this bill in the House. It's called H.R. 40, I think. 3 decades in the making. 3 decades in the making. We think there's enough. We know there's enough votes for it to pass the House, but you touched on this just now. Not the Senate, almost certainly not the Senate. And apparently it's based on what Japanese people got for being interred in internment camps during the Second World War. I mean, what do you make of all that?
Well, H.R. 40 had been introduced by Representative Conyers from Michigan for multiple decades, and it's now been taken over by, I think, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas. And the thing is, this bill is about a commission to study the issue of reparations, and it's never been able to make it out of committee, even in the House.
I see.
Yes. Yeah, so I think there is some will, but I think the Senate will back this away.
Now, I have to put the other side to you. You know that. And the other side of the argument, and you hear it all the time, is, oh, well, this is too late. It's too expensive. The country can't afford it. And we had a president in Barack Obama who was African American. So therefore, it's time to move on and not move back. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that's a very short-sighted way to look at something that is a multi-leveled, very complicated issue. But I will say in terms of funding, we always find money for the things that we value. I don't think this issue will be any different. I just think the issue is who are going to be the recipients, and that's usually what we come back to in a little bit at what you allude to. But I say this, when you own the nation and you say, this is my country, you own all parts of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it is our responsibility to repair and right the wrongs. And so while we're all taxpayers, even Black people will be paying for their own reparations with their tax monies.
Yeah.
So this, I think, is a real issue that we should be thinking about in a more global sense.
Well, I mean, it is true to say that 12.5 million people were effectively kidnapped from their homes in Africa and brought here. And, you know, the biggest problem, it seems to me, is how you actually divide up the money and who gets it. I mean, how do you do that?
Well, look, I think like anything else, it's very difficult. But I would say if people don't want to think about reparations for enslavement, which, ended effectively in 1865, we can look at Jim Crow and look at the people who suffer from Jim Crow. There are lots of people like my parents who lived through Jim Crow who are still with us and who have, I think, very real cases about educational opportunities missed, home loans denied, and all kinds of things that would make the reparations case, I think, a little bit more concrete for people and a little easier to pursue.
Okay, Niambi Carter, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.